I guess most of you and everyone on this connection knows me very well. I'm sorry I'm not this black, but the background makes me so dark. I'm very light skinned. If you've met me before, you know that I'm not this dark. So I guess I have with me today John Adeyemi, who is a registered migration agent. And we've been working together for a very long time now, precisely for the past 2 years, going to 3 years now, and providing a lot of pro bono services to assist students in having their rights plan in place so that they can get their migration outcome easily and quickly. You know, we've had a lot of success story, and we're always happy sharing those stories together. A few months ago, there was a Kenyan student who was at Macquarie, and John Adeyemi told this lady, you have to go to TASMANIA. And she listened. She went to TASMANIA, continue her accounting degree. And just few months back, I was told she got her invitation in TASMANIA. Several of my students who, some of them, they were actually engineering students from Nigeria. They were studying at UNSW. Because the tuition fee was so expensive, they changed to college. And I put them in KOI, Kingston Institute, to do accounting. These guys were just doing accounting just for fun, not like we're going to get a permanent residency out of this. But lo and below, today, these guys, they're all in TASMANIA. They got their 491 invitation. The engineering they were hoping for did not work out at the end. So whatever decision you take, it's best you take the right decision. That is the essence of the little story I'm just sharing. Make inquiry, make decision. And now I'm going to be inviting BC John Adeyemi to start the session. So it's going to be more of an interactive session where John is going to talk to us generally about the regional visas, and it's going to be starting with each state. And I guess we're going to be starting with WA, Western Australia. We start with that, move on, different states, explain to us about the state sponsorship, the 491, and any other thing. Then I can always jump in to ask some question. Then we're going to be having a session for question. You can type your question, but if you have to speak, we're going to be inviting you to speak. Just raise up your hand and we'll invite you to speak. So over to you now, Pastor John Adeyemi. So I'm going to unmute you. Okay, you are on mute. Over to you, please.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Matthias. Good evening, all. Welcome to this session. The essence of this session is to keep you abreast of the development around immigration, particularly as it relates to state and regional sponsorship. Yeah, I will be sharing some slides I've prepared just to give you update on what is going on. Now, let me start by sharing with you the immigration planning levels for 2020, 2021 financial year. I believe you must have seen this, but the emphasis tonight will be on state and territory nominated visas. For this financial year, they've proposed 11,200 slots for this financial year, meaning when you compare it with last year, 2019, 2020, it is negative 55%. That is, 2019, 2020 was more than this year's financial year by 55%. So they've reduced it. And this also includes the number of the family members, the secondary applicants. For example, maybe a main applicant with his family has about about 5 or 7 slots. So if you take it away from 11,200, it will reduce the number of visas available under state or territory nominated. So effectively, we are looking at, let me say, half of this number. Effectively, you'll be looking at less than 6,000 slots available for the whole states and territories in this financial year. So that should suggest to you that immigration planning for this financial year is going to be tough. I'm not prophet of doom, but I'm just giving you the facts and figures. Then the occupation ceiling for 2020-2021 financial year is as follows. Registered nurses, of course, has always been given the highest slots. Then followed by trade-related occupations. So I'm not going to bore you with all this facts. Then let me jump on this slide called the Priority Migration Skill Occupation List. I believe you must have seen it. You know, they've identified about 17 occupations that are critical, that are critical for Australia in, combating COVID-19 and also in the economic recovery. So these are the occupations the focus will be on in this financial year. These are the occupations. And if you look at the invitations that have been given so far, particularly on 189 and even some 190s and also 491 visas, they are mainly from this occupation: registered nurses, medical practitioners, and few of ICT occupations. So these are occupations that they are focusing on in this financial year. And as a matter of fact, most states and territories, they were advised by the Department of Immigration that any selection they are making, any nomination they are making should be around these occupations. So it's going to be really tough. If you look at invitations that was issued in October, as a matter of fact, we thought there was no invitation in October before now, until when they released this report recently. So they only invited 110 applicants. 110 applicants. So mainly registered nurses. Registered nurses were 79. Medical practitioners 14, special physicians 13, as you can see, psychologists 2, medical laboratory scientists 1. And if you compare it with September invitation, I don't have that data here, mainly they were medical practitioners. As a matter of fact, September invitation, medical laboratory scientists were more than 200 people that were invited, and they invited people on 65 points. 65 points to tell you that they're actually inviting people that are critical to help combating COVID-19 in Australia and also in economic recovery. And that is the trend so far. Let me give you a brief of updates on some of the states and what is going on. In New South Wales, they've advised that they will commence invitation shortly, and that they will only invite applicants currently in selected health, ICT, and engineering occupations, and who currently reside in New South Wales. So if your occupation is among these occupations, then consider yourself lucky and you are currently residing in New South Wales. So anytime New South Wales decide to start inviting people, then you can be sure that you will be invited. But the question is, when will this time be?
Hello.
Nobody can tell.
Hello.
Going by what happened last year.
Joe? Can I call you back, please? I'm on a meeting, on a Zoom meeting. It's Queen Ed speaking.
Can you mute everybody, please?
Can I ring you back, please? I sent.
You can go on now. Sorry, 1 minute, Mr. Sam. 1 minute.
Is it okay now?
Yes, please. Go
okay.
on.
All right. So New South Wales opened, only invited people in June on 491 visa only, just once in last financial year. It was really tough for people that were anxiously waiting for New South Wales invitation. So what I'm saying in essence that New South Wales has a way of delaying things. They are not like other states or territories, so you cannot actually bank on them, even though they say they've mentioned that invitation will commence soon. Then for 491, the focus will definitely be on F, ICT, and engineering, some engineering occupations in line with direction from Home's Affairs. At the moment, they have not mentioned anything about the management of the skilled work visa, but what we were getting before, what we got before now, was that they may likely shift the management back to the RDAs, the regional development areas. They may likely, shift the management of 491 visas to the RDA. That was what it used to be. The RDA used to invite people, but last financial year they decided to centralize it, but they are taking it back to the regional areas. So for someone who is in Double, for example, if you work in Double and you work in any of these sectors, you can be sure, 100% sure, that whenever invitation starts, you will be prioritized, rather than someone who lives in Sydney. In fact, if you live in Sydney and you are aiming to get an invitation for 491, I will tell you, just forget about it. It's not going to happen. So for Victoria, operating on a limited list of occupation at present, and they only consider those people who submitted expression of interest before 5 p.m. 21st September 2020. These are the people they are considering at the moment. And one thing about Victoria is that you must be working in those critical sectors. You must have worked there for at least 6 months. You must be living and working in that sector for 6 months before you can express interest. And that is the only when you can be sure that Victoria will invite you. So it suggests to me that this financial year, for anyone who is not in any of this occupation, should rather forget about this financial year for 491, for 190, except if you meet some other state requirement. For example, Tasmania. We will get there. Tasmania is, for me, is the most flexible among all the states. Is the most flexible among all the states. If you meet their requirement, they will definitely sponsor you, provided that you meet their requirement. And Queensland recently opened, and of course, they closed it almost a few days after, because they were flooded with a lot of applications. They are still processing visa 491, nomination for 491 at the moment. So, but for 190, they've stopped that. They plan to reopen that by mid-December. By mid-December, they plan to open visa 190. But currently, they are inviting people that applied between 29th September and 5th of October for 491 that express interest. So if you fulfill their conditions, they will definitely invite you. And the condition for 491 in that region is that you must be working in your nominated occupation in a regional area, not just stay in Brisbane and be working in your occupation and be expecting that they will invite you. No, you must be in a place like maybe Gold Coast, to Toowoomba, and so on and so forth, the regional areas. And you must be working in your nominated occupation at least for 3 months, and you must have job offer of 12 months for you to meet the requirements for their nomination. That's for Queensland. The update from Tasmania. Tasmania they told people that have expressed interest that, look, if your occupation is critical to Tasmania economic recovery or supporting the health system at the moment, then you should show interest. You should raise it up with them, then they will nominate you. Otherwise, you are advised to withdraw your application, your nomination application, and your money will be refunded. Or you continue with your application in respect of requirement to demonstrate that a nomination will lead to a genuine, ongoing, and meaningful contribution to Tasmania economic recovery. So sincerely, like I do say, and I've said it over and over again during this session, that this year in particular is a bit tough around immigration. Immigration in this financial year is tough, and it may likely be so next financial year as well, because until everything comes back to normal, before we can see the number going up. So it's going to be tough. So we need to think twice of what we need to do. Northern Territory update. At the moment, at this stage, onshore general GSM nomination application and business innovation program nomination continue and has been assessed, but no nominations can be issued until the Northern Territory has received the allocated quotas. So they are saying that up to now, they've not received the allocated quota for this financial year. Remember where I started from. I mentioned a particular number, 11,200. That's the quota for this financial year for scale and territory sponsored and state and territory sponsored visas. So what that means is that 11,200 will be distributed among all the states. And the bigger the state, the larger the quota. For example, New South Wales and Victoria, in terms of population and economic activity, and in terms of needs. So New South Wales and Victoria will likely get the highest quota, for this year. So maybe a state like Northern Territory may get half of what New South Wales will eventually get. So they are saying for now, we are not even attending to any offshore nomination. We want to focus mainly on onshore. And when they say onshore, they mean people that are actually in Northern Territory, not outside Northern Territory. You must be living and working in Northern Territory before you can be nominated. As a matter of fact, if you have to work in your nominated occupation for 6 months, and they've even changed it to 12 months now, you know, in Northern Territory for you to be invited for 491 visa. Let's look at South Australia update. No activities for now in South Australia. Everything is on. They are trying to finalize everything by late November. Then by late November, they will release their guidelines, possibly occupations. But of course, they will also, you know, behave the way other states have been behaving now, by only nominating people that will help them support South Australia economic recovery and public health response. So only those occupations on critical list may likely be considered in South Australia. So if your occupation is not on that list, then you might need to act fast, particularly if your visa is expiring soon. See, this new software nomination criteria, whatever I'm giving you now will be based on what happened last financial year, because the guideline for this financial year has not been released. But as we have heard that they are focusing on critical sectors occupations. So this may not be applicable, but of course there are other general conditions or criteria that must be met. For example, you must meet department requirements and the required point. The required point is 65. Then you must be living and working in regional New South Wales. You must be living and working in regional New South Wales. Last financial year, they changed that road by just they were flexible about it. That look, you don't even have to work in any occupation. You don't have to work, just be living, because they needed to, you know, wrap up the financial year and used up all the quotas that were allocated to them. So that was why they were flexible about the requirements. But with this COVID thing, I bet you that the requirements will be more stringent, will be more stringent by the time they release it. So you can watch out for their requirements. So I would not want to bother us with this requirement because they are no longer applicable, even though that was what they put last financial year. Let's go to ACT. ACT, you know, ACT is open at the moment, but they are only considering occupations in critical that are critical to ACT economic recovery. At the same, I mean, if you have to refer to critical skills occupation list. So they're inviting people on a monthly basis. I mean, they do that almost twice in a month. They do that often, but they are only inviting people that meet their criteria. I tell you, it's not everybody that is invited for nomination that actually scales through. You know, a lady called me recently. She said she was invited by ACT to lodge a nomination. She's a nurse. She's working in a critical sector, but she's over 45. I think she's 47. I told her straight away when she called that the application will not fly. Don't waste your money and don't waste your effort. The reason being that your age, you have not met the requirement, the age requirement, even though you met other criteria, but the age is critical to general skill migration. That you are invited to apply for nomination does not mean you will eventually be nominated. You waste that money. And let's even assume that somebody, slept off and approve your nomination, and you are told to apply for visa. That visa will not fly. The case officer will not sleep, will not doze off. She will look at your age, and eventually your money, about 4,000 plus, that is excluding your family members, it will be wasted. So don't waste your money. So ACT presently is inviting people, but you must meet the requirements of ACT. And let me run through some of the requirements. For PhD applicants, you must have completed your PhD in ACT University, and you must live in ACT for at least 12 months, or completed PhD in the last 2 years if you lived overseas or interstate. So if you meet this criteria, then ACT will likely invite you. But there's something called matrix system. It's not applicable to PhD applicants. So I will still get there. ACT nomination requirements for 491. You and your family members must have lived in ACT for at least 3 months before applying for nomination. You do not have to work in your nominated occupation. You must be working 3 months before date of matrix submission. I mentioned matrix submission. Your occupation can either be closed or open, provided that you meet the requirement. Then you must have proficiency or superior English before you can be invited. Then nomination for 190. You and your family members must live in Canberra 6 months before applying for nomination. You must be working 6 months before date of matrix submission. I tell you, ACT is actually good for people who study in ACT, or who have family who have lived in ACT for some years, and also maybe for couple who have their occupations on the list of ACT. If you are a couple and you have both yourself and your wife, you have your occupations on the list, and then the occupations are opened, you have you'll be considered, you'll be nominated, because the matrix system, you will have higher points in matrix system. Let's look at the ways allocated. ACT residents, 5 years, you have 25 points in matrix system. 1 to 2 years, you have 5 points. If you have superior English or proficient English, you have 5 points. Nominated occupation, if your occupation is opened, then you have 20 points. If it is closed, you have 0 points. If you have employment in any occupation for 1 year, you have 10 points. If it is less than 1 year, but greater than 6 months, you have 5 points. Working in a nominated occupation that is opened, you have 20 points. Working in non-nominated occupation that is opened, you have 10 points. And working in skill level 1, you have 5 points. So this is the way ACT allocates points under ACT matrix. Then if you have a spouse who is working in an open occupation, you will get 15 points. So if you add all these things together, at the end of the day, you'll be looking at around 100 points or 110, and you can be sure you will be invited. Tertiary qualification, if you have tertiary qualification, PhD, you have 20 points, MSc, you have 15 points, and so on and so forth. I think we will be disconnecting in 2 minutes. I just got that text message from Mr. Mutaya. So
yes,
probably.
So I'll just quickly jump in. We're going to be reconnecting again for the second session, and we'll be disconnecting. But when we reconnect, it's going to be more of interactive session. and we're going to take it each state. So when we're talking about a state that you are interested in, you can ask your question pertaining to that state. So we'll try to finish that state. So all states for Australia, they are doing migration, but at the same time, some people may be fortunate to get migration in WA or in New South Wales. So whichever state you are interested in, that is the time for you to ask your question. And as you can tell, you are getting this information. It's not just for you to go and lodge the visa yourself. It's to help you to make the right decision and prepare. Lodging the visa is a different tax on its own. We don't want you to make mistake. So you may need to engage the service of professionals. And John Adeyemi is very good in helping people avoid common mistakes. We've had series of students making mistake. There was a student, for example, in TASMANIA who got 190 invitation and applied as a welfare officer. And the point was, I think, 75 points. And he was claiming 10 points from work experience, which was associated to disability support worker. Unfortunately, that application was rejected because disability support worker is not related to welfare. You may be surprised to hear this, or I will say it shock you, you know? That is the case. And this student now is in a tight position because he's on a bridging visa. What is he going to do next? So in a situation like this, we're going to talk about it in the next session. I would like you all to reconnect again. Once we reconnect, we can explain these simple issues to you. And the issue for you to compare if 491 is best or 190, for me, anyone is visa. You know, visa is visa. You will always get what you want at the end. So we'll discuss this in the next session. Please just try to reconnect. Once you get disconnect, reconnect, and we'll continue the next session immediately we have